Today I am on bigthink.com in the personal growth section, and I wanted to read just a couple of the thought experiments that they have listed because it brings up some really interesting philosophical ideas. And I also wanted to see if we could get into a philosophical conversation to go down the road of these thought experiments. Now, in the past, I've done some thought experiments that are related to like what kind of room you'd like to have and what kind of bathroom you'd like to have. And these are sort of set up scenarios that someone has painted and created and then has a question attached to it. So I wanted to do this in a soft-spoken, sort of expressive way to just very calmly and soothingly ask ourselves these really interesting and potentially tough questions. So the first one is called Thompson's Violinist. This one was written by Judith Thompson in her 1971 essay, A Defense of Abortion. She writes, "You wake up in the morning and find yourself back to back in bed with an unconscious violinist. A famous unconscious violinist. He has been found to have a fatal kidney ailment, and the Society of Music Lovers has canvassed all the available medical records and found that you alone have the right blood type to help. They have therefore kidnapped you, and last night the violinist's circulatory system was plugged into yours, so that your kidneys can be used to extract poison from his blood as well as your own. If he is unplugged from you now, he will die, but in 9 months he will have recovered from his ailment and can safely be unplugged from you. So here is the question. Are you obligated to keep the musician alive? Or do you cut him loose and let him die because you want to?" Thompson, who has several excellent thought experiments to her own name, says no. Not because the violinist isn't a person with rights, but rather because he has no right to your body and the life-preserving functions that it provides. Thompson then expands her reasoning to argue that a fetus also lacks the rights to another person's body and can be evicted at any time. Her argument is subtle. However, she doesn't say that you have a right to kill him, only to stop him from using your body to stay alive. That's very subtle, isn't it? His resultant death is viewed as a separate yet related event that you have no obligation to prevent. So in question 1, that is Thompson's Violinist, what do you think? Do you think that you're obligated to keep this violinist alive? Or do you want to have him removed from your side? Let me know in the comments below. The next one is called the Veil of Ignorance. This experiment was devised by John Rawls in 1971 to explore notions of justice in his book, A Theory of Justice. Here's the scenario. Suppose that you and a group of people had to decide on the principles that would establish a new society. However, none of you know anything about who you will be in that society. Elements such as race, income level, sex, gender, religion, and personal preferences are all completely unknown to you. After you decide on those principles, you will then be turned into the society that you established. Here's the question for our thought experiment. How would that society turn out? What does that mean for our society now? Rawls argues that in this situation, we can't know if our self-interest We can't know what our self-interest is, so we cannot pursue it. So without that guidepost of our self-interest, he suggests that we would try to create a fair society with equal rights and economic security for the poor, both out of moral considerations and as a means to secure the best possible worst case scenario for us when we step outside that veil. Others disagree, arguing that we would only seek to maximize our freedoms and assure perfect equality. And of course, this raises the questions for the current state of our society, as it suggests we allow self-interest to get in the way of progressing towards a just society. Now think back for a moment that this was probably written before things like Black Lives Matter, before all this sort of this new polarization that kind of exists. So what do you think? How would that society turn out? Would you make radical changes to the way things are now? Or would you leave things kind of the way they are, in a more of a kind of a Darwin sense? Let me know in the comments below what you think about the veil of ignorance. That is the second thought experiment we did, the one from John Rawls in 1971. Okay, we're going to do one more from bigthink.com, and this one is called The Experience Machine. Robert Nozick came up with a thought experiment which appears in his book Anarchy, State, and Utopia. Okay, here's the scenario. Imagine that super neuroscientists have created a machine that can simulate pleasurable experiences for the rest of your life. The simulation is ultra-realistic and indistinguishable from our reality. There are no adverse side effects, and a specific pleasurable experiences can even be programmed into the simulation. Regarding pleasure experienced, the machine offers more than is possible in several lifetimes. Now here's the question. Do we have any reason to not go in? Do we have any reason to not go in? Okay, so Nozick argues that if we have any reason to not get into then hedonistic and ultranarianism, then the idea that pleasure is the only good means that we ought to maximize it. That idea is false. Many people value having real experiences or being a person who does things rather than dream about doing them. So no matter what the reason is, if you don't go in, you can't claim pleasure is the only good thing. And Nozick thinks most people won't go in. Now, there are counter-arguments. Some hedonists argue that people would go into the machine, or that we would have a status quo bias that leads us to treat the reality that we're currently in as more important than other better ones. So see, they're already thinking about possibility. They're already thinking about the next opportunity, right? So in either case, the experiment does present us with a problem for those who argue we only want pleasure. And that often has been something that you'll see come up in my community posts, where I ask, would you rather move away from pain or towards pleasure? So what do you think about the experience machine? If there was a machine that you could hook yourself up to that gave you this infinite amount of pleasure, whatever that means for you, would you have a reason to not go in it? Let me know in the comments below. I think I'm going to stick to 3. I'd like to thank bigthink.com and the personal growth section for sort of allowing me to read these and present these ideas. And as always, I want to thank you for being a part of the Intentional Attention ASMR Collective. And if you're not a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button below. And I hope that you are having a wonderful summer. And just keep in mind that I love you so much, and we will talk very soon.